Hello and welcome to the Metapod podcast. I almost coughed in the middle of that. This is episode 199 of the podcast. Don't get it mixed up with last week. Let me tell you, it is not an accident. It's clearly intentional. But we're ready to give you some hot new news and some information. Well, more information than anything. But Sean, how are you?
I'm good, Jake. Not much has happened. Normally we're like, how was your weekend? But we're recording this in advance of the next week's episode because I will be on a 7-day road trip through the middle of the country to Vancouver. I'm going to be moving to Vancouver for 3 months. So if anybody listening is a Vancouverian, I like Vancouverian, but I don't know how you would say people who live in Vancouver. But hit us up in the Discord.
Oh, yeah. And apologies for last week, though, slight delay on getting the episode up. I had a goof and I had started doing it real late and I had to wake up early. So I was like, I have to redo it in the morning because I need some sleep. So, but anyways, it got out. It's out there. And this one is coming on time too, or it better come on time or else I'm going to have a problem.
No excuses.
Yeah, it better. I have 5 days now to do this one. But anyways, this episode will still be plenty good, even though we're recording plenty in advance because we're doing our Stellar Crown set review. Stellar Crown pre-releases should be starting or have started or is starting.
Will be the week.
They should be
following this episode's release.
Yes. So if you are listening to this as it's released, check your local game shops for pre-releases happening this weekend. Feels like it's been a while since the last pre-release.
It has. It's been a minute.
But maybe that's because we just had Shrouded Fable come in the middle of it, and then thinking about Worlds, it was crazy. But Sean, I've actually done a lot of locals this week. Pokemon.
Oh, okay. Have you hit a lot of Iron Thorns matchups? Is everybody going crazy for the Thorns?
No, I think there's only so I've gone to 3 locals in the last 3 days. just going to Las Vegas, there's a locals every single day. And just trying to get a lot of locals in before my sports really starts going in my job, because then I won't be able to go to too many locals. So taking advantage of that while I can. But I feel like what I've come to find out about this format is how good going second is. So I've played Chin Pao mostly. Just been rocking Chin Pao, been loving Chin Pao, been super, super strong in a lot of different situations. But I have lost every game going first, and I have won every game going second.
Interesting. So even as a Chen Pao player, you prefer to go second, you think?
I think it's probably wrong, but I prefer going second as Chin Pao.
I was about to say, you can't do nothing turn one, so...
Well, I think the problem is just you have these big giant beat stick decks with Raging Bolt. You have other strong decks in the format, and then we also have a couple loyal trio decks at our locals, which also super strong going second. They can get off that turn 1 attack, but if the opponent gets off and Roaring Moon.
Yeah.
Right. Roaring Moon. Now, if your opponent gets off a turn 1 attack, and because you went first and maybe more than likely you only have 1 Frigibax down, right? That's a huge problem in a lot of situations. So I almost feel because you're kind of okay with playing from behind at times because you can take multiple prizes seemingly every turn.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost stronger to just get a stronger setup going second and then just balling out from there, just trying to beat out your opponent in prizes. I don't know.
Yeah, especially if you can go second and not put a Chen Pao on the field. So you just don't leave them with any 2 prizers. You force them into an prize trade. Yeah. That's, you know what? It's wild that going second as an evolution deck, it's not that it's better for you, it's that it's worse for your opponent, and that is the optimal play. That's crazy.
Yeah. I also don't know if it's the optimal play. I have a small sample size of 11 games or something like that. So more testing needs to be done. But anyways, that's my report of the week. My
Yeah.
Pokemon report of the week.
Well, let's see, Jake. We'll go through Stellar Crown set review, and we'll see how much this new set either encourages people to continue going second, or if it will encourage people to switch everything up and go first instead. I don't know. I doubt that. I highly doubt that, given the cards.
There's a
we've
lot of
seen.
crazy stuff. There's a
Yeah.
lot of crazy stuff in this set.
But I mean, I guess this is a long one, probably. I'm guessing. So strap in, folks, and get ready to make as many incorrect assertions of how card text rulings go as we do. So yeah, jumping into the set review here, starting with the grass Pokemon as always, but this one's interesting. The very first Pokemon on Justin Basil, the site we're using, shout out to them, on their set translation here, starting with an EX in Venusaur EX. Now, this is from one of the starter decks in Japan. Typically, starter deck EXs are not that good. And this Venusaur
This one
EX,
follows suit.
yeah. Once during your turn, if it's in the active, you can heal 60 damage from one of your Pokemon. I think this is very similar. Wasn't there a Venusaur V or something that had a similar-ish effect of like healing itself when it was in the active? Or
Was
something?
it the VMAX?
Maybe, yeah. There was a very similar thing. I read this and I'm like deja vu. And then for 2 grass and a colorless, dangerous Toxwhip, 150. Your opponent's Pokemon is now poisoned and confused. I mean, look, it's a nice little bonus, I guess, but I don't know if I would play rare candies just to do that.
No. I think what's more interesting is there's no Ivysaur or Bulbasaur in this set.
Oh, that's really weird. Yeah, it's like they just threw
I want to talk about that more.
yeah. I mean, I guess there's a Venusaur and a Bulbasaur in was it whatever set we got the Charmander and the Squirtle in, right? Like there's a couple
like
out
Pokemon Go.
Maybe before that, maybe 151.
Oh yeah, 151 would have had one. Yeah, for sure.
And there might be more, but anyways, yeah. So my gut says don't bother with this Venusaur EX. But you know,
my gut also says that.
Yeah, but you know, hey, it's got 4 retreat costs, so that heavy baton. If you do want to play with this, then throw a heavy baton or 2 in here, just so you don't have to worry about the energy. But Jake, what's on your radar as an interesting card after that?
I think what's on my radar as an interesting card is Cradilly. So Cradilly from Stellar Miracle. It's a stage 2, so it's a little bit beefy, but I think its ability is pretty interesting. I think, and attack could be something that we see in cloth decks. So Mucus Buffet. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, choose burned, confused, or poisoned. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now affected by that special condition. And then for grass energy, 100 damage, Marshy wins. This attack does 100 damage for each special condition affecting your opponent's active Pokemon. So with Cloth, right, we see Cloth and Hisui and Electrode do more damage. Who knows? Maybe this Cradilly, right? You can do like a fossil kind of style deck. What's the lab? Research lab?
Is that still in format?
I don't know if it's still in format. That's why I want to look it up, but I couldn't remember the name. Pokemon Research Lab. No, that is way too old. What am I thinking of? Maybe there is no fossil boosting format, but what I'm trying to say is if you can get this out and play and effectively not guarantee getting a special condition, but like, let's say you get like a, something that poisons with your Brute Bonnet, let's say there's something confusion wise, right? There's still you can paralyze something, right? You can choose to burn it now as well, or you can choose to confuse it, right? Confusion actually could be huge because then there's not a lot of switching cards in format. So it forces your opponent to say like, okay, I'm going to have to flip a coin to even be able to hit you, right? If you don't even knock it out. So could be curious if we see something along these lines, like a 101 in like a cloth deck. I want somebody to do it. Come
I
on.
mean, did you read out the attack on this? Marshy wins? I can't remember.
Yeah, 100 damage for each special condition
Right.
affecting the opponent's active.
Here's what's weird. I actually think this is a better deck by itself, and maybe you throw in a two cloth just as an alternate attacker that doesn't need um to evolve. The reason being is if you actually think about the math here, right? You can poison people with Brute Bonnet. You can burn them. There's an evolution that I saw somebody post in our Discord, maybe of what's the evolution of Slugma?
Macargo?
Macargo. I think there's a Macargo in format that when your opponent and the new Pokemon comes into the active, it gets burned. So there's like ways to do burn and confusion or burn and poison. And if you can do confusion with this Cradily, you could have 3 Pokemon on the board putting all 3 conditions on, and then you just do 300 damage. Burn will take 20, poison will do 10, that's 330. It knocks out everything in the format that is of any relevance, right? And then there's a part of me that thinks like this might be an interesting deck on its own. I could see people even playing this with maybe you play the new a stadium that we're going to get to in a minute here. There's a new Spec stadium. You could play it even with Salvatore, Jake. You could go into the leap with Salvatore, the supporter that lets you go get an evolution out. Maybe you play Hyper Aroma in this deck. Like for 1 grass energy, I don't know. I think this is definitely a rogue deck. It's not going to be like a meta deck per se, but I think this could be a really fun rogue deck if you're looking to play something off the beaten path.
We love rogue decks here on the Metapod when we do our set reviews. We want to bring in the wackiest of wacky combos, I think, in these cards.
But I guess next on the agenda, I'm just sort of reading down here. I mean, look, I'm going to quickly point out this Mo Rotom, grass type Rotom Pokemon for a colorless energy. It does 30 damage, but before doing damage, you discard all Pokemon tool cards and all special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. I'm only going to point that out. I don't know if Lugia is going to continue being a powerhouse, but in theory, 1 or 2 of these in a Lugia matchup is absolutely annoying. Like, can you imagine they bring out their, Iron Hands, and then you send this up into the active, and for 1 colorless, you get rid of all of that special energy, including their legacy energy? That would be...
And you're like, wow.
Jeez, that would be so annoying. So I only mention it. Yeah.
It's definitely curious. I think definitely this would work in like control and stall. If you're worried about the Lugia matchup, I think this is a nice like 1 card inclusion for that could do some damage. So, and I don't think it'd be too hard to find. I think maybe the hardest part would be finding an energy for it, but
yeah. I mean, finding the one, but I mean, if you're playing control, you can just the matchup, and you're going to play energy for other things like Chi-Yu or whatever else it might be. So, this is just a one of that maybe gives you a much better win rate against decks like Lugia that can just search the energy out of their deck. It's really annoying. It's hard to control those decks. So, but yeah, Jake, what is the next on your radar?
I'm going to go to Dipplin and Hydrapple EX. I want to talk about Dipplin first, just because it has an attack on it, even though it does 20 damage. It says during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. We talk about Raging Bolt, right? Roaring Moon, attacks from those basic Pokemon. So Roaring Moon wants to knock this out. They've got to use Calamitous, the one that auto KOs and does 200 damage to itself. Things like that. I don't even know if Raging Bolt has an answer. Actually, I think you just stick this in the active, have nothing else on the field, and you just keep using Coding Attack for 20 damage. But it's interesting. A stage 1 90 HP Pokemon in a stage 2 line. That stage 2 is Hydrapple EX, grass type Pokemon has the ability Ripening Charge. Once during your turn, you may attach a basic grass energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. If you attach energy to a Pokemon in this way, heal 30 damage to that Pokemon. And then for 2 colorless energies, has Syrup Storm, 30 damage. Does 30 more damage for each grass energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So 30 plus, that is. So 30 plus 30 for each grass energy.
That's crazy. I've seen people talking about lists with this deck with Teal Mask Ogre Pond. So if you're able to get out a couple of these Hydrapples and then like a few Teal Mask Ogre Ponds, you're basically throwing like 5, 6 energy onto the field every single turn. So you're effectively, from nothing, you're doing 210 damage each turn, 6 energy just from your hand that you're accelerating, plus the 30 is 210. If you have any energy left over from previous turns, you are kind of like knocking out anything in the format basically after 2 turns. Now, the only downside of this, Jake, is that you obviously have to put a bunch of grass energy in your deck. So,
yeah, you have to put a bunch. But we've seen decks like Dialga, right?
Yeah.
Dialga runs a ton of energy. Jesse Parker, Miraidon running 16 energies, lightning energies. So it's not impossible of a feed. Might be slightly uncommon for decks, but this one could fit that mold. And I would imagine you'd probably play like at least a couple Gardenia's Vigor. Sean, do you remember that card?
Yeah, is that the one that like lets you put grass energy from your
Supporter.
hand and then you draw?
Yeah, you attach up to 2. Well, you draw 3 first, and then you attach 2 grass energies from hand to
Okay.
your benched Pokemon in any way you'd like. So, I don't know. I mean, another way to accelerate energies does a little bit of draw, can synergize well. Although Gardenia's draw 3 is not totally appealing, the Ogre Pawns also draw for you, so you can
Yeah.
still see a ton of cards in a turn. I don't know. I think that would be a neat little combo there for the Hydrapple fans. You would definitely kill Charizards.
Oh yeah, no, I think any Charizard that's going up against Hydrapple, you're sort of sitting here looking at this guy going, well, 330.
Gross.
The only thing in my deck that one hit KOs this is my Radiant Zard. They easily one hit KO me. They can easily knock out my Pidgeots, my Rotoms. I think Charizard probably has a bad time against this deck.
Yeah, not a good time for Charizard. Definitely want to dodge that matchup. Sean, what is the next card that you're looking at out here?
The next card that I'm looking at, I'm scrolling down. I think we go all the way to the fire. There's nothing else in the grass, right?
Yeah, I would say fire is the next one.
Yeah, honestly, even the fire, I'm just like, I'm scrolling through. There's not really.
I would say let's talk
Salazzle?
about Salazzle. Yeah, Salazzle is a really cool stage 1 Pokemon, 120 HP. Has this attack called Sudden Burn for 2 colorless energies, which could be a double turbo, right? An easy attachment. Your opponent discards a card from their hand. If this Pokemon evolved from Salandit during this turn, they discard 2 more cards. So we talk about some kind of like hand control decks, right? Think about playing Xerosic, right? Putting your opponent down to 3 cards in hand and then evolving into a Salazzle and using this attack, right? There are no other conditions on this card outside of this Pokemon having to evolve. So your Salandit could literally put your opponent from a 10 card hand, right? Xerosic, Salazzle combo, a 10 card hand down to 0. 0. That's insane. It might not happen every time like that, but that combo like existing, and it's not that hard of a combo, it feels like.
No, I mean, because really, what do you need? You need a Salandit in play. You need a double turbo energy.
Or just 2 fire energies, right? Magma Basin's a thing.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. But like, a double turbo is also fine, right? Like there's a few options here. And then you just need to evolve into this and play Xerosic. Now, what that means is you're not advancing your board state, but the nice thing about this attack is since it's not doing damage, Pheasantipity won't come online, right? Like you're not actually knocking anything out, which is its own problem from a gameplay perspective. Like you can't this is the one thing I would say about this deck as being an issue is like you need to find another way of knocking your opponent's Pokemon out because like so what if they never have cards in their hand? Um, it doesn't really matter. Eventually, they'll draw into the cards they need if you're just never doing damage. There's no point, right?
Hmm.
So you do
Yeah,
have to
it's
find
different
some
than the it's different than the Chip Isaac's days, right? Of
right.
Pidgeotto or Rangaroo. Where like, okay, I know you're not going to deck anything good or that you can use, so easy, get rid of that.
No, I think this is really good though if you're playing a deck that maybe it's control, maybe it's its own deck, honestly, where you're playing this, maybe you're playing some form of poison or burn in between
Hmm.
turns. And if you get this off going on in your second turn, say you go first, right? You go first. Your opponent has a little bit of time to set up, but you immediately come in with this. They have 0 card hand going into turn 2. That can be devastating, right? And if you have any way to take advantage of the fact that they can't respond, I think that's really what it comes down to. It's like, do you have that way to respond? But it's a really cool. It'd be so. I'm imagining playing against this, and this would be the most annoying little series of cards. Oof.
Yeah, I mean that card with the right combos could be slightly damaging to your self-esteem and emotion. But I want to quickly go back a little bit. Shout out Panseer right here, just for our GLC people out there. Fire having an option for a Call for Family starter Pokemon, right? For a
Okay.
colorless energy, Call for Family. Search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it on your bench. Unfortunately, it's not 2, but maybe you could get the Pokemon that you want. Just wanted to give a quick shout out for that before we move into what I believe we'll talk about is Cinderace EX.
Yeah, Cinderace EX. It is the first of our stellar type Pokemon. Well, it's not actually stellar type; it's
Hmm.
still a Terra type. But the new sort of theme of stellar crown being these Terra type Pokemon that have really crazy energy requirements, similar to Amazing
Hmm.
Rares back in the day. But the payoff, hopefully, is enough. So Cinderace EX, it is a stage 2. You have to go through the whole line, but 320 HP. The first attack, Flare Strike, for a fire and 2 colorless, does 280 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Flare Strike, but you know what? That doesn't matter usually. There's typically some way to switch retreat in most of these decks. So really, just think of it like you're doing 280, which is going to knock out any V-Star. And if you throw a Maximum Belt on that boy, Jake, you're doing 330. You're knocking out basically anything. You're feeling good. But the
Oh yeah,
sec,
and with stuff like Prime Catcher
oh
and
yeah.
I mean Switch being a staple in format, and we have other Switch cards that
I
people
mean,
just like don't use.
honestly, I think even as something as simple as Petulant EX, you throw a Petulant
Yeah,
EX, you put one other Dark type Pokemon in a rescue board, you're good to go, right? You don't
easy.
need anything. Um, and then the second attack, though, what makes this one sort of special for these sets? You have a fire, a fighting, and a dark energy attack. Garnet Volley. This attack does 180 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So really cool sort of snipe potential here. You can just do 180 to anything on the field, taking care of Luminions, taking care of Mew EX. That's mostly it in terms of
I'm
immediate two prizers.
I think one thing that we can talk about later in this podcast, maybe after we see a couple more of these Terra and Stellar Pokemon, is these attacks, right? Fire, fighting, and dark is not a easy combo, right? So I wonder how many of them gravitate towards like the Lost Box engine, right? Using Colress, using Comfey, Cramoran, early game attacker to prepare you for, setting up your stage 2 guys and then using like Mirage Gate to be able to accelerate those energies.
I mean, that does seem like probably the best, most consistent way to get all the energy on. Um,
Hmm.
Now, you do have Magma Basin, so that can be your fire energy. And you can attach one, so it's really a third energy that you're missing. And I'm wondering, there's got to be either in this set or in a previous set, there's bound to be like at least one or two supporters that we typically haven't thought of as being very good, that can fulfill these requirements for the different decks, right? I mean,
Hmm.
Janine's doesn't do it for this because this isn't a dark type Pokemon, which I think Janine's needs it to be a dark
Yeah,
type. But
Janine says it has to be a dark type.
there are other supporters out there who have similar, like, oh, search your deck for an energy and attach it, right? Like if it's just one random energy. So like maybe you play it more with that if there's like a different supporter line you want to play. But I would agree that, like, I would say on average, the Colorless engine is probably best because it's good draw, finds you, the energy combos you need. But I also think the question for some of these cards, like Cinderace, in my mind, I don't know if the different energy matters in this one. I'm looking at this going like, honestly, 280 with any sort of different modifiers that I can find in the format, that
Hmm.
is the draw for me, right? A straight 280, no downside, does new damage to itself, doesn't discard energy. That for me is why I would play this. The 180 to somebody's bench, I'm like, we got Prime Catcher, we got Boss, and weirdly enough, Jake, what also is strange to me, I know they're trying to give a fire type Pokemon a bench attack, which is weird, but what's weird for me is that, like, Terra type Pokemon, which is the kind of Pokemon they're really pushing in this set,
Oh
can't
yeah.
take bench damage. So like it's one of those things too where you're just kind of like the exact archetype that you're promoting most, then you've given this type of attack to cannot actually deal with the Pokemon that you're pushing the most. So
Well, I mean, there's so much bench support Pokemon, right?
there
You
are.
talk about Pheasantipity being a card, honestly, one of the best cards in the game right now, just being in almost every single deck. Rip if you don't have your Pheasantipity yet. But so like doing stuff like that, even though this 180 is a little bit short on Pheasantipity, like getting support Pokemon can just be enough in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I mean, like if you've got a way to do a couple of damage to one of those Pokemon, because again, 180 is an interesting number, but it does not actually knock out a Pheasantipity, I don't think. I think Pheasantipity is 210.
No. Yeah, you're off by 30, but
And that, to
um
me, like that's what's a little awkward, is it's like you didn't even make the attack big enough to deal with the some of the best support Pokemon. Like I said, it deals with Mew and it deals with Lumineon, but it doesn't necessarily deal with things like Pheasantipity or Peturant. So I'm like, it's a mixed bag.
mhm.
So, and that's my 2 cents. I'm like, it's a little interesting. I do think that a card I saw at the World Championships briefly that I think might see more play with these stellar types. Jake, do you know what Poppy is? The supporter Poppy?
Doesn't Poppy, it finds two basic energies and attaches them to your Pokemon
No, it
or
allows you to
something?
move 2 basic energies from one of your
Oh,
Pokemon to
moving.
another.
Got it.
So the reason I mention that is I think there is a world in which, some of these stellar Pokemon are like they need crazy energy requirements. It might be hard to get it turn after turn, but I do think that Poppy could be an interesting way to attack with one. If it doesn't get KO'd in response, you can move the energy, retreat that Pokemon, do it again with Poppy. So I don't know. It may not be good, but I do think that's a card that could see some rise in play if people find these attacks useful.
I wonder if Gita also gets play.
Oh, what
Do
does
you
Gita
remember what
do?
Gita does? Gita is what I was thinking of. Search your deck for up to two basic energy cards and attach them to one of your Pokemon. But it also includes the clause during this turn, your Pokemon can't attack. So
I
you
mean,
trade off getting those energies to not attacking, which is good in the early game, right?
yeah.
When you're still like doing setup and whatnot, but late game, not as good.
No, that's true. But that could be. It very well could see play in the early game, right? Like
Hmm.
if you're really leaning into these weird energy things, like you could see somebody playing 1 or 2 copies of Gita just for that early game. But anyways, that's enough on Cinderace EX. I do think that this card's first attack, though, like if you're into fire decks and if you think Hydrapple is going to get played a lot and Teal Mask, Ogerpon, and all these types of decks are going to get played, I think Cinderace is a really good potential fire Pokemon deck to lean
Hmm.
into. But Jake, the next one on the list, we'll very quickly talk about the Blastoise EX, also a starter deck.
Quickly.
Yeah, also a starter deck. It has an ability that lets it take 30 less damage. I think exactly like an old Blastoise VMAX maybe. And then
Yeah, this is so common.
and then for 2 water twin cannons, 140. You can discard up to 2 water energy from your hand, and it does 140 for each card you discard in this way. I will say, having a Pokemon that is effectively 360 HP that can do 280 damage by discarding not energy from the field, but energy from your hand. I actually think that this Blastoise, if you're a real Blastoise fan, that could see play. Like, it's not like I was just praising Cinderace EX for a 3 energy 280 attack, and this is effectively a 2 energy 280 attack, right? So,
Especially when we have energy retrieval, especially when we have
Earthen Vessel.
Baxcalibur, Earthen Vessel, Superior Energy Retrieval. We have a lot of great ways to find, these energy cards and consistently spin them around and use them. So you're already playing a rare candy deck. So if you have like a Baxcalibur line in there, you can get these attacks off every single turn as long as you have a Blastoise in play. So could be something worth noting.
Yeah, yeah. This one actually might see play. This one might be playable, whereas the Venusaur is not. But Jake, what's the next card on your list?
The next card is a
A stellar Terra type.
Stellar Terra type. Lapras EX. This is a basic 220 HP water type Pokemon. It has 2 different attacks. One is one that we typically see on Lapras, where it does more damage for the amount of water energies it has. This one being for 1 water power splash 40 times. It's 40 times the amount of energy attached to the Pokemon. So not specifically just water energy, because as a Terra type, it has another attack that is non-water. So if you use the non-water or if you use the water plus other energies type attack, it will help out your power splash, which could be good. 40 is an interesting number. Not like the Chin Pal that we see that does 60, but could be something worth noting. But the real crazy part, the unique attack of this Lapras, this one is funny. Water Psychic Metal. Water Psychic Metal, an odd combo, I would say. Larimar Rain, I think is how you pronounce that. Look at the top 20 cards of your deck and attach any number of energy cards you find there to your Pokemon in any way you'd like. Shuffle the other cards back in your deck. 20.
That's
crazy.
Sean.
20.
I don't think I've ever seen a look at the top X where X is like anywhere near 20.
So you have the top 20 cards of your decks. You draw 7 for turn, right? That's 53 cards left in your deck. You put out 6 prizes, so 47 cards in your deck at the start of the game, 46 after you draw for turn. In Pokemon, right, you could assume that you're probably going to have like somewhere between 30 to 35 cards left in deck, like after one of your turns. Like by the time that you get to this, you're probably sitting around at most 30 cards in deck when you're using this attack. So looking at the top 20 is 2/3 of your deck that's left. That is almost every single card in your deck, which is quite insane to think about, especially if you're playing stuff like Super Rods, right? Putting energies back into your deck, getting that number up larger. I mean, that attack is really cool. Unfortunately, it does no damage, so you're effectively like just doing a setup turn. Yeah, you're just doing a setup turn, and you're having this in the active worth 2 prizes that can quite easily get knocked out with 220. So might be a little tough, but I don't know. This attack is whack.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, the attack is crazy. I feel like I wonder where this attack goes, like what deck it goes in, right? Because to your point earlier, if you have Colorless, like, how many times do you need all of your, basically all the energy left in your deck on the field? It'd be super cool when you pull it off, right? Like, I could see somebody getting this attack off turn maybe 2, right? Like, if you if you attach a water energy or attach an energy somewhere and you turbo energize onto this Lapras EX, which
Mhm.
is, very possible. And then turn 2, you get this guy going for your, attacks. And you get all this energy out of your deck and onto the field. If you don't have to worry about the energy the rest of the game, like that's super crazy. That would be awesome, right? But I don't know what the payoff is for that, right? Like so what? You don't have to worry about energy for the rest of the game. Half the decks in format don't really have to worry about energy very often because there's so many consistency cards for that.
Mhm.
Like and you're having to play these 3 specific energy, which means that your deck is probably only going to run those 3 types of energy. So like I don't know what the payoff is in my mind. And the first attack is cool, but like Chen Pao is better. You need less energy to do Chen Pao, and they're both 220 HP. I don't fully understand.
And Chen Pao can find those energies for you
Right. It's just
with the ability.
so, maybe this could be an interesting engine. Maybe there's another stellar type Pokemon we'll see later where like this is the way to set up maybe 3 or 4 of those Pokemon on your bench for the rest of the game. And like fine, like maybe we'll get to that. I think the one that I can think of, Jake, is maybe Sylveon. I think uses some of the same energy types. So we'll get to Sylveon here in a minute. But like that's kind of the only one that immediately sticks out in my mind.
Maybe you just play this as a one of in Chin Pao as like just another option for attacking, right? An easy inclusion could be it's a basic Pokemon, so you just like your Chin Pao, you can slap that down, you can put energies on it. Yeah, you do a lot less in terms of per energy, right? You're only doing 2/3 of what Chin Pao's output could be,
True.
but one, you don't have to discard the energies, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably pretty nice in itself, especially maybe in the early stages of the game. Could be like
Yeah.
a good beginning of the game attacker when you're just hitting like a little baby one prizer that was left in the active. You don't have to discard 2 energies right off of Chin Pao. You can just have 2 energies attached to a Lapras EX. So in my mind, that's probably the best way to put this card in a deck and then discard or not discard, but disregard the second attack on it in that. But I probably Chin Pao is the best option for this.
It's interesting, right? It's kind of strange. I like that point though about since you don't have to discard the energy if you're playing against maybe control.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you don't have to discard your energy means that you can just attack every turn as long as this is in the active. Or like even just single prize decks, right? Like typically I would say Iron Hands is probably better in those matchups, but
Mm-hmm.
some single prize decks, maybe they can't knock you out, but the fact that you're having to discard all of this energy every turn is just really resource intensive. So I could get that. Yeah, I could understand
Mm-hmm.
that. But moving on to the next one, I'm just scrolling down here. There's not really. Is the Caracosta any good? Yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't know. I don't know, Jake. It's a stage 2. It's probably not very good. But I will just point out its ability, Primal Knowledge. Your Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active evolution Pokemon, and that does stack. I don't know. There's a world. There's a world
You
in
just
which
have a
that's
4 Caracosta, 1
right.
Baxcalibur, and a Chin Pao, just
Right.
doing an extra 120 damage.
Yeah, that's right. That's the dream, right? So,
If you
um,
can ever get it off.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe this card. I don't know if it's good in water decks and GLC. I don't know if 30 more damage because its attack is not bad. 150 for 2 water is
Mm-hmm.
fine. So I don't know. Maybe it lives in a GLC deck too. But I just thought it was interesting. A stackable buff like that is actually pretty good.
You
Uh,
do have a Greninja EX in here, which is also pretty bad, but it's one of the, the hits, one of the ultra rares. So we'll at least mention it. Stage 2, Water type EX, Pokemon 300 HP, Water Colorless, Phantom Shuriken, 100 plus damage. Flip a coin if heads, this attack does 100 more damage. That's it. Also has 2 retreat cost as a ninja Pokemon. So Really doing Greninja dirty on this card. But we'll talk about Crabominable now. I think Crabominable is interesting. This stage 160 HP type Pokemon has the ability Prep Work. Attacks used by this Pokemon cost colorless less for each Kofu card in your discard pile. Kofu, one of the new supporters in this set, and its attack for water and 4 colorless is Haymaker, 250 damage, and during the next turn, this Pokemon can't use Haymaker. So, just like we've seen with Excited Heart Charizard, right? Radiant Charizard, giving it a ability that minimizes the amount of energies needed to perform these big, heavy-hitting attacks. This one using Kofu. So, nerfed in a sense that it's not as good as the Radiant Charizard, right? Even though they both do 250.
True. You do need
Having
to play
Kofu,
4 Kofu
yeah.
in the deck.
Yeah,
But,
I would much rather this be prizes, but is interesting.
I mean, I will say this can't be turned off by Iron Thorns or Klefki, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, you don't have to worry about, you have this, but then your opponent has something that turns off those abilities. Right now,
Only Fluttermane.
only Fluttermane, and if they've only got a Fluttermane in the active, you probably have ways to deal with it, I would assume. So
I hope.
again, I think this is a cool, I don't think it's a top tier deck. I think it's still a rogue deck, but this could be a really fun rogue deck. I think if we ever get a reprint of Battle Compressor in any form, I think that this deck maybe gets a lot better. Because if you could just throw Kofu, maybe there is one coming out, and I forget it.
Isn't there an A spec that's like Battle Compressor? Not in this set. It's not in this set. I think it's a future set.
There might be.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I feel like I heard it. Maybe it wasn't real.
I mean, yeah, I would say if there is an A spec, I think if you want to run this, when that A spec comes out, that is when you want to run this, because getting the Kofus into your discard is really annoying otherwise.
And that's the whole point of the deck.
Right. You want to get them all in there, turn one, preferably, or all but one of them, right? And then you can just discard the fourth one somehow. But but yeah, 250 is no joke. No joke. So, but yeah. The next one I want to talk about is actually another Stage 1 Water Pokemon, Dreadnought. The ability here, Iron Defense Shell, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's attacks if that damage is 200 or more. And it has an attack for 3 colorless, 80 plus if your opponent's active Pokemon already has any damage counters on it. It does 80 more. Kind of a lot of energy to do maybe 160. But, I think we've seen a not insignificant number of decks where all of their attackers do 200 or more damage, right? Or a lot of them, a significant number of them. And so, I don't know. That's this definitely could be a surprise for people in those matchups.
Make it a Hero's Cape Turo deck and just make it almost like stall.
That's crazy, Jay. I love that.
That'd be funny. It's probably really bad, but I think it could be funny.
I'm trying to think of if there's other ways to get that effect. Like you could Rigid Band, which means that your Pokemon, your stage 1s take 30 less, maybe 40 less, something like that. But like if you could get it just over the 200 peak, right? I don't know if there's like a combo of cards that do that, but that'd be wild. What's the next one on your radar?
I think, even though I won't talk about the cards effect, I think the Electabuzz is a really, really good art if you're a big arts person, illustrated by Oswaldo Cato. I don't know of that name. I don't know how long they've been doing illustrations in the Pokemon trading card game, but I really like this art on this Electabuzz. So, but moving into cards that we would want to talk about, we're going to talk about 2 cards that go hand in hand. One being Joltik, right? Joltik, a little basic 30 HP Pokemon, has a very interesting first attack that you can use going second potentially in this deck. For a colorless, you can use Battery Charge. Search your deck for up to 2 basic grass energies and 2 basic lightning energies, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you'd like, then shuffle your deck. It synergizes really well because grass and lightning fit in Galvantula EX, the Terra Stellar Pokemon that it evolves into as a stage 1. 260 HP lightning type Pokemon has 2 different attacks. One of them is a lightning colorless charged web. It's 110 plus. The opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon EX or Pokemon V, does 110 more damage. So Pokemon EXs and Vs kind of dominating the format right now, the most popular cards. You're effectively going to be getting 220 damage for 2 energies every single turn almost. And then the second attack, Grass Lightning Fighting. So getting the grass and lightning from the Joltik potentially means that you just have to attach a fighting from hand. Fulgurite, I don't know if I said that right. 180 damage. Discard all energy from this Pokemon, and during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. So this card effectively also doing an item lock strategy as well. One of the cards that people are most excited about in the Stellar Crown format coming up.
That's very interesting. I wonder, like 180 is very good. Item lock is very good. So item lock at 180 damage is crazy. Like we've seen decks like Vikavolt back in the day, and even further back like Seismitoad, like
Banette, you know, as well.
But usually they don't give them as much damage. They don't allow you to do 180, which is like that's
like
no joke.
30.
Yeah, it's like usually like 30 damage.
Vikavolt did like 30, but it also had electro power, but it still didn't rack up to this.
yeah, it couldn't get this high. So 180 is no joke. Discarding all the energy is, especially when that energy is grass lightning fighting, it's kind of weird. You know, there maybe are ways to keep this going for a couple of turns. Maybe the Joltik though, like, so this Joltik's attack, this attack is insane. You're getting 4 energy out of the deck of 2 different types and attaching them however you like. Obviously, like the implication is to play it with Galvantula, but just in general, like that's great. That's so good. Like this, I'm thinking about this to Jake as even being like in an Iron Hands deck. You start with this, and then you go get 4 energy. So you get a lightning, a grass, a lightning, and a grass. Attach 2 to 2 different Iron Hands to start the game. Like that's crazy.
Or you could attach it to 1 Iron Hands.
You could if you don't mind it getting Crown Catchered and then blown up. But like I don't know. I think this Joltik might find homes outside of Galvantula EX, but I just want to point out that attack might be better than any of the Galvantula EX attacks in some ways.
It definitely has a lot of strengths for a lot of different reasons, but we got to continue on because this is a big set. And there's a lot to do. Charge-a-Bug right next to it has a lightning attack called Parallel Lineup. Search your deck for up to 3 Charge-a-Bug and put them on your bench, then shuffle your deck. You may look at the Vikavolt and you're like, Jake, are you crazy? This Vikavolt is trash. And it kind of is. It has a nice big 240 attack, but if you remember, there's a Temporal Forces Vikavolt, and that Temporal Forces Vikavolt does 120 plus for its attack, 80 more damage for each bench Charge-a-Bug. So if you have 3 other Charge-a-Bugs on the bench, right? Because you evolve this one, or maybe let's say this Charge-a-Bug gets knocked out, right? That you use its Parallel Lineup attack. You bring one of the other 3 up, you evolve it into a Vikavolt. So you've got 2 Charge-a-Bugs on the bench. You are doing 280 damage with this Vikavolt Circuit Cannon attack for only 2 lightning energies. Very easy to get off generator, so if you like Vikavolt, and I know there are some Vikavolt fans out there in the Pokemon trading card game, I don't know.
That's very cool. That definitely could be a fun, another fun rogue deck to consider.
It's definitely a rogue deck, but I think it's funny.
Yeah. If you're going to play that deck, make sure to play Manaphy. Otherwise, raiding Greninja absolutely destroys you. Just so you know. Looking through these cards here, I will point out this Togedemaru. We always point out things for control, and I think this Togedemaru is actually pretty good for control. Shocking chance, 30 damage. If you have exactly one prize card remaining, your opponent's active is now paralyzed. So if you have been putting things into the active, using your opponent's resources, forcing something into the active and then paralyzing it that late in the game, and if you just do that every single turn, and if they're out of, you playing Airy, you're getting rid of all of these items. If they have no way to get out of this, absolutely brutal. I will say the thing that keeps this card and control in general down is Petrant EX, but I mean that is what it is.
Well, if you have Petrant EX in the active, you can't do it unless they have another Petrant.
If they have a dark type Pokemon on the bench.
Oh
so,
yeah.
But I mean, still, it's very specific. Anyways, what's the
Zeraora under it does have an attack that is literally the Raikou attack, the Raikou Entei Suicune attack. So doing that 20 plus for each. Oh no, this is just opponent's bench Pokemon. Never mind. Continue on.
This is half of a Raikou.
Go on.
So going down here to the psychic Pokemon. Oh, this is interesting. I want to talk about the Slowking real quick. This is a weird attack. So Slowking, stage 1, 120 HP. For a Psychic and a Colorless, Inspirational Challenge. Discard the top card of your deck. If that card is a Pokemon without a rule box, choose one of that Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. Like, I like this. We have that new stadium, Academy at Night, that lets you stack the top of your deck, Jake.
Yeah.
I very much think that you could build a Slowking deck that is consistent. Now, I don't know what non-rule box Pokemon, but the fact that you only need 2 energy to do this attack, you could probably just look through the Pokemon trading card database and say, what are the biggest, craziest attacks that I can do that normally you would never play because it's a stage 2 or it costs 6 energy or whatever. I think there's some pretty cool stuff that you could find out there. And all of a sudden this Slowking, if you have just a mart and your opponent never actually knows which attack you're going to do, right? That could be a lot of fun. A Slowking deck.
There could be some interesting things. You just find the heaviest of hitters out there, or the strongest but insanely costly Pokemon that you can find out there. Some of those stage 2s could be useful in a deck like Slowking. Reminds me of Slowking EX in a sense in terms of its setup and just rogueability, as we'll call it. Love rogueability here on this podcast.
I don't know. This one could be fun. I think this one might actually be a proper, not a meta deck, but like a tier 2 deck. Honestly.
Genuinely, no.
If somebody told you, Jake, hey, I have a deck for you, and it can consistently do 250 to 300 damage as a single prize deck.
Consistently. That's going to be the key, which I don't know if consistently it's going to be able to do. But I like the idea of it, and I definitely think it's rogue, and I think it's a cool rogue. But no, don't put it in tier 2. Don't do that. Don't do that.
What's the next one on your radar, Jake?
I think going down, we can talk about Dashbun EX, EX type Pokemon, stage 1, 250 HP psychic type. Full Belly Time is its ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may heal all damage from each of your evolution Pokemon. And if you do, discard all energy from the Pokemon that were healed in this way. So, could be interesting in some decks, right? Especially those psychic type decks, being able to heal all of those. It's almost like a Professor Turo, but not having to re-evolve your evolution Pokemon, right? Professor Turo, when you pick it up, getting rid of all the energies and you just pick up the Pokemon, this kind of skips that step. And then with the attack, Wondrous Shine, 130 HP or 130 damage for 2 colorless, your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. So could be something that you see Turo use on this instead to constantly do some healing. I think this could be interesting in Gardevoir. It's a little tough because it is a stage 1, so you do have to evolve into it. But with Gardevoir effectively putting the energies back on the evolution Pokemon. It seems a little niche because you can really only do it on Gardevoir EX, right?
Yeah.
As the healing, because we don't have Shining Arcanas in the format anymore. I don't know. Could be. I don't know. I think just healing all evolution Pokemon is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world in which maybe you play this in not even a Gardevoir deck. Maybe there could be a stage 2 EX type deck that's like really big,
Hmm.
can take a lot of damage, but maybe only needs one energy to attack. I think about, maybe it is honestly Greninja EX. I don't think the deck is great, but Greninja EX, you can play cards like Boomerang Energy on that. And when you discard the Boomerang Energy, I don't know if discarding only with an attack does the Boomerang Energy trigger. I can't remember. But there's a thought in my brain that like there could be a different set of decks where the fact that this is psychic doesn't really matter. It's entirely like as big of a Pokemon as you can put out there that doesn't get KO'd instantly. And then if you can get a couple of those, like between like retreating them, right? You do that. Your opponent thinks they're setting up damage for an end game. You evolve into this dash bun, and then they're basically starting the game over. I mean, honestly, Hisui and Gudra V-Star. I know that you have a soft spot in your heart for that deck, Jake. This is probably really good in a Gudra V-Star deck.
It could be very interesting. Boomerang Energy, by the way, only does its looping effect after being discarded by an effect of an attack.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't work with this, but
nerfed a little bit in that sense. But I like your idea. I like the wheels churning in your head. But yeah, Gudra could find this pretty interesting. I don't know if you can smush it in like the Lost Box package, because I feel like that's like the only way to do Gudra, right? Is through the Lost Box package, unfortunately, because of its multiple types of energies. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe someone will crack it better than us. But moving on, there's not really too much. There's 2 fighting type Pokemon in terms of EXs that are subpar in a lot of situations. Medicham EX, 260 HP fighting type stage 1 Pokemon. Colorless, Chiatsu. Put damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon until its remaining HP is 50. So that's pretty interesting in a lot of situations, right? Especially some of these huge, big Pokemon that we see in format can knock them down all the way to 50, but you probably effectively give up 2 prizes in exchange. So that's the trade-off.
I guess my question here, right, is this better than Serena EX? Because Serena EX has a very similar attack.
No, because Serena EX, what's the one? It's a mask. There's a tool
Panic
card that
Mask.
you can attach. Panic Mask.
Yeah.
Saying in Panic Mask, prevent all damage done to the Pokemon this card is attached to by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that had 40 HP or less remaining. So after using Medicham, even if you had a Panic Mask on it, those Pokemon would still be able to attack you, while Serena, how do you spell Serena? Serena? Anyways, Serena EX says 30 damage. You put it down to 30 HP. So that just has better synergies, in my opinion, for the same amount of energies. The Trop Kick, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Or no, actually, the attack Icicle Soul is just one grass energy. So
now
it's probably better to just play Serena.
2?
No, stage 2. But
Okay, so
I don't think stage 2 decks are like that big of a deal right now because of Rare Candy Arven.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Boy, howdy. Yeah, it's a weird one. I think it's an interesting attack. I think you could combo this with Frostlass EX, not with Frostlass, the one that puts damage counters on a.
Oh yeah, you could.
And then if you combo that with Panic Mask, but I look at this and I'm like, is it that much better than Serena EX? And the answer in my mind is no. And then that probably means like, well, if Serena EX is not that great, then this probably also isn't that great. So
and Serena EX doing 180 heal 30 for 1 less energy.
Yeah.
For basically the same amount of damage as Yoga Kick. the 190 attack on the Medicham is just beats it. And then there's a Lucario that's arguably even worse.
Oh God,
Stage
this
1,
is terrible.
250 HP fighting type EX Pokemon. Fighting Colorless Low Kick for 50 damage. Fighting Colorless Knuckle Pulse for 120 damage.
Yeah,
That's it. Move on. Next card.
On. Let me see. Just scrolling down.
There's a
here.
Diancie in here. I think Diancie is kind of neat just for its first attack. It's 110 HP fighting type basic Pokemon. Diffuse Reflection 40 times. This attack does 40 damage for each special energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. Not saying it's good. Not saying it has really a home really anywhere, but if Lugia, right? Lugia continues going on 40 times, I don't know. I mean, if you get the right card, I don't know. Maybe if they have to take a big knockout with a Weird Ear, you can respond with your own one prize Diancie. But yeah. I digress.
It's one of those weird ones. Like, but yeah, fair. It's interesting, but nobody's gonna play it. But the next one on my list here, you know what, Jake? I'm gonna point this one out because I don't know how much Call for Family exists in fighting type, but the Phalanx.
This Call for Family is good.
Yeah, this one is actually better than the Fire one. For one colorless on the Phalanx, search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, put them onto your bench, so you get 2 instead of 1. Great, awesome.
And it's Phalanx, which we love this guy. The art is great by Kapow. Love the soft art in there. But like one of the things in GLC is like you really want them on the bench because like in my water deck I have an Alolan Vulpix, but that only puts 2 Pokemon in my hand. So if they're basic Pokemon, I need to put them back on the bench. Yeah, so it's a little tough in that aspect. But going into Gargonical, it's the Salt Pokemon. The stage 2, 340 HP, big boy. 340 HP fighting type, has the ability Salt Body, can't be affected by any special conditions. Fighting colorless, Block Hammer 170. And then during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 60 less damage from attacks, effectively making it 400 HP.
Slap a hero's cape on this bad boy, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, go to town. You'll be 500 HP effectively. 500.
Jake, I think there's a part of me that says like this might be like if people like the way look, Iron Thorns is good because it turns off abilities, but if you liked what's the Lucario Melmetal GX back in the day, I think this is a good one because it's also, I will point out, 4 retreat cost, so that tool card I mentioned earlier in the podcast does work on this one. The Heavy Baton works on this. I think I would definitely play this with Mist Energy as one of my energy on the Pokemon so that you can't get Roaring Mooned. And doing 170 every turn, like if you're never getting one hit KO'd, like say you have the Hero's Cape and you just play this card with, maybe not, I guess you would have to play something like Turo with this, but Jake, this actually might be a good Pokemon to play alongside that Dash Bun EX that we were talking about.
Oh yeah.
Because say you evolve the Dash Bun and then you use the Turo on the Dash Bun on the same turn, replay the basic.
You need a lot of energy acceleration though.
You would need some. I mean, I will say you would
need a ton.
2 colorless. 1 fighting and 2 colorless is fine, Jake. You attach one, you attach a double turbo, you're good. You're good. They can't knock you out. When you dash bun though, you got to get those 2 energies back on it. Oh, you're right. I don't know.
Because that's probably 2 attachments.
I mean, look. There might be ways. That's all I'm saying. There's probably ways.
Pokemon Company, make fighting accelerant energies, you cowards.
Anywho, let's see. What's next on? Geez, I'm trying to. That Swalot. I don't know if I've ever seen this as a Pokemon card. Swalot.
What? Really?
I don't think I've seen it as a.
It's not popularly printed.
No, but anyway, stage 1 dark Pokemon 130. I'm only pointing this out because I think it's interesting. For 1 dark energy, it does 10, but if this Pokemon has more energy attached than your opponent's active, it does 160 more. I don't know.
Hmm.
This is definitely weird. Like, you don't want to be throwing too much energy onto this guy, but, early in the game, it could be good. I don't know.
Could be interesting. I think this art by Okacheke
It's
is
crazy.
insane.
Yeah, it's
It's
so
so
good.
good. But moving into metal type Pokemon, I guess we'll talk about Melmetal a little bit just because we talk about all the ultra rares before we get into what I think may be even better of a metal Pokemon. Stage 1, 280 HP metal type EX Pokemon has one attack, just one, and it's not in the middle of the card, and it kills me that it's not in the middle of the card. Metal, colorless, iron swing, 100 times damage. You flip 2 coins and it does 100 damage for each head. So if you get 4 energies on this bad boy, there's a chance that you can hit for 0 damage. Bad card. Anyways, Archaludon, I think is how you pronounce this.
Hmm.
Now, this is the Pokemon that I want to talk about in Metal, or one of them, I should say. Has the ability Steel Bridge. It's a stage 1, 100 HP metal type Pokemon that evolves from Duraludon. Has the ability Steel Bridge. Each of your Pokemon that has any metal energy attached to it has no retreat cost. So the attack that it has metal, colorless does 160 damage, and then next turn it can't attack or whatever. But I think having that ability to have no retreat cost when we also have things like Metang in format, right, that can attach metal energies anywhere, could be interesting for some metal decks if metal becomes a thing, especially in the card that we'll talk about here in a second. Having no retreat cost can just be really good, right? We've seen that in a ton of decks over time. There was the Pikarom, right? The Zero Aura EX. If there was any lightning energy attached to Pokemon, it had no retreat cost, was super
It's true.
good. Always in Pikarom. Although this is a stage 1, so it's a little bit more to get going. Could be a boost to metal type decks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it also depends if they ever print a better Archaludon as well. Like, if we see an Archaludon EX or something in the future, I think this gets a lot more value too. Um,
Hmm.
in terms of the next one, I'll talk about Oathworm. Orth, no,
I love this
Orthworm.
card.
Orthworm EX. It sounds like Earthworm. Yeah, that's the point. Um, the ability here, Kerpow Return. When this Pokemon is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, even if it's knocked out, put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon for each metal energy attached to this Pokemon. So having some sort of like an effect where, like, whenever you get hit, you deal as much damage back as the number of energy you have times 2, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and then for 4 colorless energy, you do Rock Tomb for 150 during your opponent's next turn. The defending Pokemon can't retreat, which might matter, right? Like, I think this is super interesting because if you're forcing your opponent to stay in the active and hit you with that, you do 150. If you've got 4 energy on, they'll take another 8 damage counters after they hit you. That's 230. You could even think about putting things onto this Pokemon like there's a Rocky Helmet that puts another 3 damage counters on it. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Do you think this will see any play, Jake?
It's a cool way to stack damage on your opponent's Pokemon as they take damage, right? And you're already producing damage effectively, making your attacks seemingly bigger. I mean, we have the Metangs in format, as I mentioned earlier, really good in Dialga. So does synergize well with this 4 colorless attack Rock Tomb that it has for 150 damage. So could see a little bit of play. I think this is goofy. I think this is funny. I really love this card. He also looks really goofy.
Yeah, yeah. I will say if you're interested in this card, I would definitely play it before Pokemon prints another Path to the Peak type effect as a stadium.
Oh yeah.
Just because I feel like cards like this in the past, we've always been like, as long as that card, that stadium exists, these cards just can't see much play because all it takes is turning off that ability and then the whole deck falls apart. So I think this is one
Hmm.
of those where it's like, if you're interested, play it now. In terms of dragon type Pokemon, I mean, the Raging Bolt.
There's only like one dragon type, right?
Yeah, we just have Raging Bolt here. It's an ancient type Pokemon, which might matter. Um, the second attack I don't think is any good. The first attack is interesting though. For a lightning and a fighting, does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy attached to this Pokemon. So it starts off with 60 to a bench. I don't know. I mean, 60 to a bench might matter. I don't know what deck you're playing. Like maybe I don't know. I don't think this is very good. But like I just wanted to point out a bench sniping attack on an ancient Pokemon is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, what is the next one on your radar as we move into the colorless Pokemon?
I think what I want to talk about is the Eevee. So there's another Eevee option. One of the things that we'll talk about in here, spoiler alert, is a Sylveon EX that is pretty good, but another Eevee option in here. But I think there's probably better Eevee options. I will say this one having a call for family, putting a basic Pokemon, put it on your bench. Only one. So going back to the one basic Pokemon. Why can't they all have two? I don't know. But there was an Eevee from Astral Radiance that is still legal in the F block format that has an ability once during your turn when you play a Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your other Eevee, you may search for a deck. You may search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it, then shuffle your deck. So if you evolve one EV into a Sylveon EX, you can effectively get two right away because that ability will proc. So I think that's worth noting, but let's continue on in there. We'll talk a little bit about why Sylveon is so interesting later, but this Noctowl in here is also really cool. A lot of people are talking about this Noctowl. It's a stage 100 HP colorless type Pokemon, has the ability Jewel Hunt. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, if you have any Terra Pokemon in play, you may search your deck for up to 2 trainer cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So every Terra type is probably going to be playing this Shady Dealings card right here. Noctowl, so good, I will say.
Jake, I think this is better because Shady Dealings could only get you items, right?
So yeah, I mean this
is
getting
better.
trainer or no. I think Shady Dealings got you trainer cards.
Did it?
But the stage 1 Drizzile only got you 1, and then the Inteleon, the stage 2 got you 2. So Noctowl effectively skipping that because it also, I mean, the Shady Dealings were also like
attackers in their own right.
Yeah, they had the Inteleon had an attack, but also didn't have any clauses to be able to use the ability, whereas the Noctowl says, okay, you have to have a Terror type Pokemon in play in order to get this Shady Dealings type effect. So expect to see this Noctowl. It's a really good card, and I would definitely get a play set.
Yeah, I actually think that we talked about the Hydrapple EX deck earlier. I think that the Teal Mask Ogerpon, I believe, is a Terra type Pokemon. So if you are playing anything with the Teal Mask Ogerpon, I think it might be in your best interest, especially if you're playing something that needs an evolution like Hydrapple. Who knows what else, but it might be in your best interest to play this Noctowl because just getting 2 trainer cards out of your deck can find you, instead of hoping you draw into it with Teal Mask, you just get the 2 cards you really need. So
there's also a Hoothoot from Astral Radiance that I think might be better than the one here. This one just doing potentially more damage by flipping coins. This Hoothoot from Astral Radiance has an ability called Stand Sentry. It says basic energy attached to your benched Pokemon can't be discarded by an effect from your opponent's item or supporter cards. So giving a little bit of a layer of protection in a sense. And it's just basic energy though, but with your Terra type deck, you're probably playing mainly basic energy. So something to keep in mind if you don't have your Astral Radiance Hoothoot character rares. It has or illustration rare, I think it's called, from the trainer gallery. You can go snag those up. It is a very good art if you want to bling out your deck.
Yeah. The next one I'll point out here is Fan Rotom. I'm calling it out just for its ability, Fan Call. Once during your first turn, you may search your deck for 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less, reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle. You can't use more than one fan call ability during your turn. Maybe this is really good if you're playing that Sylveon deck like we were talking about. You throw this guy down on turn 1, which is searchable by Buddy Poffin, and then you can effectively go get all of the EVs out of your deck. If you Buddy for 1 EV, then 1 EV and a Fan Rotom, you use the Fan Rotom ability to go get the rest of your EVs. You have all 4 of your EVs into play by turn 1.
If you evolve one of the EV that I mentioned that has like evolves from it, can you evolve the 1 EV? And I have to pull that EV back up. Can you evolve one EV? Yeah. Do you get all 4 Sylveons out right away? Is that how that works? Oh my gosh, crazy. I have to reread this card. No, it says once during your turn. Well, it doesn't say one resident evolution ability. Yeah. Maybe it does. Ooh. I need a judge. Somebody. Yeah, I need a judge ruling. Yeah. I need to know if I can get 4 Sylveons out for the price of 1. That would be insane.
That's a good deal. That's definitely a good deal, Jake. Combo. I'm buying it.
I do agree with Fan Rotom. I think Fan Rotom's pretty good and could be as well good in GLC. Yeah. Also, just a really nice setup Pokemon for the beginning of the game. GLC, if you need that.
This might be the best card in a colorless deck in GLC if you're doing an evolution deck, especially.
Yeah, it has to specifically be an evolution deck with baby Pokemon, because I know like one version of colorless is fossil Pokemon. It's big in fossil stuff. So yeah, that could be a little bit of a hindrance. But we'll talk about the last Pokemon on our list, Terapagos EX. This has a ton of noise from the Pokemon community. Has a 2 colorless attack called Unified Beatdown. Now it does 30 times damage for each of your benched Pokemon, which synergizes really well later, but it also has a second clause inside of it. It says if you go second, you can't use this attack on your first turn. So I think really trying to prevent some donk situations, because with 2 colorless, you can just attach a double turbo, put out a bunch of bench Pokemon, and then just slap whatever is in the active and maybe knock out, do some prevention there. So kind of curious that it has that in there, because you can't attack going first, and with this card you can't attack going second either. So you may spend an attack if you're going second doing a setup type Pokemon that has like Call for Family, or maybe the the Joltik would synergize well with Terapagos potentially, because Terapagos EX, its unique Terra Stellar attack is Grass, Lightning, Water, which can be accelerated by that Joltik. It is called Crown Opal, 180 damage. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic non-colorless Pokemon. So any Raging Bolt deck, any Roaring Moon. Well, Roaring Moon would have to use the other attack, but
you're fine with that.
Prevention right there. Yeah, Chin Pow, right? You take away a lot of different options for these basics. The what's that one card that just won Worlds? Iron Thorns.
Yeah.
Iron Thorns, right? Preventing from that. There's a lot of different decks that can struggle against this. So I don't know. A lot of people are excited about Terapagos.
And the nice thing about this, which we'll get to a stadium soon, the Terapagos EX's first attack, though, goes absolutely crazy with the new stadium that's coming out. I only point that out because you think 30 times. Well, 30 times 5, how is that any good? Well, there's a stadium that lets you expand your bench if you have a Terra Pokemon in play, which we will get to in a bit. So just keep that in mind. This first attack is better than it seems on paper without that stadium.
I think we can honestly just go ahead and talk about it right now, going into the trainer cards. There's 2 fossils in this set, one for Tortuga, and then also the Lilith, because we talked about Cradilly, and also the whatever the Tortuga's evolution is. I already forget its name, but Area 0 Under Depths from Stellar Miracle. If a player has a Terra Pokemon in play, that player can have 8 Pokemon on their bench. Being a Skyfield Pokemon when you have Stellars like Terapagos right there could be really nice for getting that damage built up. 8 Pokemon on the bench can effectively get you 240 damage for 2 single energies. Could be really nice in a lot of situations, and also could just be really good. Like, you have a water energy for this Terapagos. If you see this in like Palkia, right? Palkia doing a ton of damage for, let's see, that would be 60 plus 8 times 20, so 220. So actually you're doing less, but I
No,
think, right?
Palkia,
Well,
Palkia
it's
also
both
includes your
sides.
opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So your opponent probably has some bench. So you could do a lot of damage actually
So
with
if
Palkia,
your opponent has a full bench of
potentially.
5 and you have 8, that's 13 times 20. That's 260 plus 60 is 320. You can do 320 damage with Palkia now.
Without any other damage modifiers.
Yeah.
Insane. But this card, definitely one that you're going to want to get 4 of if we were doing like a buy list type of thing. Terra Stellar Pokemon are the rage right now. There's a lot of Terra Pokemon in format, so you might as well just have this, because I think for any sort of deck that doesn't really have a stadium that it really, really wants, this can be an excellent option for them.
Yeah, and I will also say, Palkia stonks going up. If you enjoyed playing Palkia a year ago, you'll be happy to know that it's going to be really good again. So just so you know,
yeah, I mean, it has much more viability at this point.
Next card here, though, we're getting into a couple of supporters. We have Briar. You can play this card only if your opponent has exactly 2 prize cards remaining. Pretty awkward, pretty annoying here. But if you're trading back 2 prizes at a time, then yeah, it's going to be live, hopefully on your last turn of the game. If it's not your last turn, you probably lose. It says, until the end of this turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out by damage from one of your Terra Pokemon's attacks, take 1 more prize card. So there is a world in which you can take just 2 attacks to win the game. Or yeah, like in theory, you could knock something out with Iron Hands EX, and if it's a 2 prizer you're knocking out, you take 3. And then when your opponent has exactly 2, you take out another 2 prizer and you get 3. So, but you'd have to do it with a Terra Pokemon. You can't do the second attack with an Iron Hands. Really,
which we've talked about. We've talked about a couple of Pokemon, right? Cinderace has a big damage attack. Lapras has an uncapped attack. Terapagos, we talked about with its what is that? Unified Beatdown, can be a lot of damage heading in. So I think Briar actually working pretty well. This deck that it fits in, though, would have to have a lot of inherent draw, right? This also is like a card to basically win the game. It feels like you only play this when you're about to steal the win from your opponent, because your opponent has to be at exactly 2 prizes remaining. So players can play around this card, right? Just like Beast Ring, if you're worried about Briar, but with Lumineon still in format, with different draw cards that you can have, like Pheasantipity and Bibarel, right, is still popular in a lot of decks. I don't know. You could draw around this. Radiant Greninja is still a thing too.
I will also say the one not awkward, a good thing is Charizard decks, if they are still good, right? That's going to be a big question with Hydrapple and Teal Mask. But Charizard is a Terra type Pokemon, the Dark type EX Charizard. So if your opponent's at 2 prizes, that means you're doing 300 damage. That can knock out a lot of things. So,
Oh yeah.
If you are keeping up with that prize trade, but maybe your opponent puts you on a really awkward, odd prize map at the beginning, this just can come in at 3 prizes left and win you the game. And all you have to do is be a Charizard deck, right? Like and you're probably playing Pidgeot.
Have Pidgeot in play, yeah.
Right. So it's definitely also, if you're going to continue playing Charizard, I think Briar is a good one of. I wouldn't put more than 1 in any deck, but if you're going to play it, you got to play either Pidgeot or probably Lumineon to find it when you need it, because otherwise why play it?
Exactly. I think this is a cool card. Should we talk about Crispin? Maybe we'll talk about Crispin. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards of different types, reveal them to your opponent, and put one of them into your hand. Attach the other energy to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. Could be good, because this effectively gives you an extra addition in terms of the attachments, right? Because the energy that you put in hand, you could use as your manual attachment for turn, or attach through like Ogerpon or another ability of sorts like Baxcalibur. So could find a niche home in a couple different decks, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that when we were talking about like what are the other energy acceleration cards, if you're playing especially a stellar-ish Terra Pokemon that needs to evolve, you're probably attaching one in a perfect world. You're attaching one on a previous turn. And all of the attacks we've seen thus far are 3 energy costs. So yeah, this basically finishes out everything you need. You find both of the energy you need, you attach one of them, you attach the other from hand like you were saying. I think Crispin is a great partner supporter in decks like that if you have a different type of draw engine, like Bibarel.
Yeah, you have to have a good draw engine.
Yeah. But if you have one of those things, it's good.
Is it even draw engine now, though, with the popularity of Arven?
I mean, well, you can't
just have
Arven and
Arven
Crispin on the same turn.
Well, I know, but like you Arven in the early game for setup, you go Crispin to do some of your other stages, right? I don't know.
I mean, no, this could be very good. So
better than Deluxe Bomb, in my opinion.
Yeah, like Deluxe Bomb, the first A spec we're covering today. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, put 12 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon, then discard this card. So, I'm sorry. What? Stop for my A spec?
This is
that's gross. This is so dumb.
I mean, we've seen niche cards like this have some playability, right? We saw
Surprise
in Dragapult VMAX way back, Surprise Box as well in stuff like Goodra. So like we've seen cards like this do some damage in the format, but as the A spec of choice, I don't think it's good enough, because we'll talk about an even better A spec here in a second. After we talk about Glass Trumpet, not an A spec card, but an item card that is pretty good. You can only play this card if you have a Terra Pokemon in play, which can be very easy since, we've talked about a couple basic Terra Pokemon already in this episode. Choose up to 2 of your benched colorless Pokemon and attach a basic energy from your discard pile to each of them. So you get aggressive draw in the beginning, right? We've seen aggressive draw with Carmine, with Squawkabilly, right? Some excellent options. You can then, with all those energies in the discard and your Terapagos on the bench, go ahead, use Glass Trumpet, accelerate energies. Remember that your accelerant of energies doesn't have to be Terra Pokemon. It's just benched colorless Pokemon. You just can only play the card if you have a Terra Pokemon in place. So if you have excellent non-Terra options that you want to attach those energies to, you can do that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how, because I think right now, I don't think the card is, I think it lives in a Terapagos deck, I think.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a 4 of in Terapagos.
Yes. But like I think there could be a future in which this card starts to see play elsewhere. I mean, I'll just go out and say it, right? Again, I don't even think Sylveon's in this set, Jake, is it? No.
Oh no, it's not. We haven't even talked about it. Oh my gosh, we'll talk about it at the end of the podcast.
Well, anyways,
or like go over it, or we can go over it whenever.
It's going to be a crazy card when it does come out later. I'm surprised. I thought it was coming out in this set, but anyways, Eevee is a colorless Pokemon, so this does work on the Eevee. So I think this card will start to become much more insane in the future. I think for now it's like a clear auto include in Terapagos decks, but I'm not sure it goes anywhere else. But in the future, I think it becomes much more aggressively played in other decks.
And remember, this is a prospective set list. I don't think we have the actual set list yet, since pre-releases haven't happened or anything like that. Nothing. I don't think too many things are confirmed right now. But anyways, that Sylveon is going to be coming soon. It's broken. We'll talk about it soon on the podcast. Yeah, and you probably can talk to some people in our official Discord server. If you want to join our official Discord server of the Metapop podcast, click the link in the description or the show notes below. There's my plug of the day for the Discord. Anyways, the next A-Spec, which is a great A-Spec that I really want to talk about because it reminds me of oh shoot, what's that band card?
Forest of Giant Plants.
Forest of Giant Plants, but this one is called Grand Tree. It's a stadium A-Spec card. Once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a stage 1 Pokemon that evolves from one of their basic Pokemon in play and put it on that Pokemon to evolve it. If that Pokemon is now a stage 1, they may search their deck for a stage 2 Pokemon that evolves from that Pokemon and put it on that Pokemon. And then the players shuffle their deck. That's crazy. You're doing... I mean, it goes for both players, right? So if this stays on the field, it will probably be used by the other player if they are an evolution deck, right? Because why would you not? It doesn't end your turn, right? So you can keep doing things. You can keep doing things on your turn. There is another clause in there. Yeah, the worth mentioning that doesn't make it as broken as Forest of Giant Plants, because I think Forest of Giant Plants could skip this. If memory serves correctly, you cannot use Grand Tree's effect during your first turn or on a basic Pokemon that was put in play this turn. So nerfs itself a little bit in that aspect, but I still think it's a freaking broken card that should be played in a bunch of decks as the A-Spec of choice. Especially you evolution heavy decks.
Yeah, and this is a good enough card, Jake, that I almost think to myself, you might play Roseanne's backup just to play Grand Tree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If this is the A-Spec of choice in your deck, I think you play Roseanne's backup. If this is the A-Spec of choice in your deck, you may even play the new Colorless Tenacity to search for it out of your deck.
Yeah.
So those are two cards that if this is something that fits perfectly in your deck, and if your deck is a stage 2, it could never work for whatever other reason, just put those other two cards in your deck, get as much value out of this as possible. Because as Jake said, this card, especially as we talk about how turbo the format is, but the format's turbo-ness, if you will, really benefits primarily basic attacking decks. But I think this allows decks that are not basics to maybe have the opportunity to be turbo like this a little bit.
Think about playing this in Charizard, right? And just getting Pidgeot all the way up to a Pidgeot EX and then searching for whatever card you want on your turn. That's kind of crazy. Roseanne's backup, for anyone who doesn't know, Brilliant Stars F block supporter card. You choose one or more, so you can choose all of these things if you want. Shuffle a Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. Shuffle a tool card from your discard pile into your deck. Shuffle a stadium card from your discard pile into your deck. And shuffle an energy card from your discard pile into your deck. So you could choose all those different things. You could just choose one of them, as Sean was saying, in the just the stadium there. If there was Field Blower in this format, this card would be insane. Because then you would use it, evolve on up, then Field Blower away your Grand Tree away, so then your opponent couldn't use it. That'd be crazy. I love Grand Tree.
Yeah, I will say though, if you're gonna play this card, just keep in mind a lot of stage 2 decks opt not to play any of the stage 1s. You do need to play the stage 1s, just because as the card reads, you have to go get the stage 1 and then you can go get the stage 2. So it does require you to put in stage 1s and to have enough of them in your deck to find it. Because imagine you use this effect, you haven't searched your deck yet, Jake, and then you go look and the stage 1 is prize, and you're like, no.
Oh no, yeah, because I mean, we look at like Tord Recklev's deck from Worlds, right? 10th place at Worlds playing Charizard Pidgeot. He played a one of Pidgeotto. He played a one of Charmeleon. So could synergize well in that aspect. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You do need to make sure that that card is in your deck if you're only doing a one of. The Kofu that we talk so much about with that Crabominable. Here's the card, Sean. The almighty Kofu right here. Put 2 cards from your hand to the bottom of your deck in any order, then draw 4 cards. And if you can't put 2 cards at the bottom of your deck, you can't play the card. So, I mean, it's honestly, it's not
It's
the
all right.
worst, right? I have seen worse supporter
Oh
cards
yeah.
than this one because this does hand filtering,
Yeah.
right? Does a little bit of hand filtering, and it says draw 4, which is better than draw 3. So beat that hop.
That's true. Hey, I will say, if you consider this like a straight draw 4, because oftentimes if you have a couple cards in your hand, but the problem is if you can't put 2 cards, if you have 1 card in your hand and Kofu,
Yeah.
it does nothing. So you need to have 3
Yeah.
cards at least when you play Kofu, which is weird. But it's not if
Who
you put any
knows?
cards. Sorry.
Yeah, so they could have made a worse Kofu is all I want to say on that.
That's true. I want to briefly mention Gravity Stone, only
Mm-hmm.
because this is an item, a tool card. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active, the retreat cost of both active Pokemon is colorless more. It's weird. I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. It's
This
a
is
weird card.
Spadops. Spadops doing more damage based on the retreat cost of Pokemon.
Yeah.
That's it. All my Spadop gang rise up. Lacey, though. Lacey, another supporter card. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 4 cards. You may see this and think, oh, wow, that's bad. But if your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, you draw 8 cards instead. So we've seen cards like this that have this sort of niche play either at the beginning or the end of stages in the game. I think of like Lily from Ultra Prism. That's the first one that I think of. You know, having this draw up to 8 cards, really, really cool. So you could see Lacey in some niche late game play, especially as like single prize decks, right? I think single prize decks can play this card, forcing your opponent to take 6 knockouts. Could provide an opportunity or two to play Lacey because drawing 8 cards, so good.
Yeah, I do like this card a lot in a single prize deck as maybe a 1 or 2 of. Because what you're probably thinking is once you get down to 2 or 1 prize that your opponent has left, you probably want to opt for maybe a Roxanne or an Iono over this.
Yes.
But drawing 8 cards when you're halfway through the game, drawing 8 cards out of your deck is huge. Like sometimes that's like drawing half of your deck.
Yeah.
And for some of these decks, you need to find a lot of pieces. So and you can't risk discarding anything. So yeah, I think it could see play in some very specific decks.
Think about playing Lacey, then using Radiant Greninja, and then using Fevzindipity flip the script.
Gross.
How many cards is that? That's
it's draw
13
15,
cards.
13, yeah, something like that.
I think it's 13. Yeah.
Ugh, that's a lot of cards.
Yeah, that's how I felt playing Chin Pao the last couple days. I was like, wait, I'm gonna Bibberol and then Greninja and then flip the script. I was like, I've drawn so many cards after being Iona'd to 1. But anyways, the final card that I think we should talk about, there's a couple different berry cards in there that you know, from opposing specific types of Pokemon, you take less damage, whatever. Sparkling Crystal, the last card and also last A-Spec of this set. Attacks used by the Terra Pokemon this card is attached to cost 1 energy less of any type. So for your Terra type Pokemon, right, we've talked about some of these crazy attacks. You might want to play this tool card to negate an energy in general of your attack, right? With the Terapagos, you can negate the water energy, right? And just have the grass lightning because we talked about the synergy with the Joltik earlier. There are plenty of different options for different Pokemon that could utilize this. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see this in some Terra decks.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is it's a really good card in those decks. I think if we ever see, I don't know if I would play Roseanne's backup for this card specifically. It's effectively an extra energy accelerator. So there's a world in which you have a Terra Pokemon that has no energy on it, Jake. You play that, what's it called? The supporter that we talked about earlier, Crispin. You play Crispin, you attach 1, you attach the other from hand, you play the Sparkling Crystal, and in 1 turn, you go all 3 energy onto that Terra Pokemon. It can do its crazy attack, whatever that attack might be. I don't think it's good enough for Roseanne's backup, but I think if we ever get a reprint of any card like Lana's Fishing Rod, which I don't think we're going to see while we have a specs like this in play, but if we ever did, I think the value of something like this goes way up. Absolutely insane.
it could be crazy, especially with Arvenin format. Makes this very easily searchable
You're absolutely
in a lot
right.
of different situations. So could be something that we wait to see Arvin go away if they stop ever reprinting that freaking card. I remember that card has like 5 different sets that it's been printed in, and it is G block. So
It's here for a
Arvin
while.
here to stay. Yeah, it's going to be here for a while. But Sean, is there anything else you want to talk about in this?
No, I think this is an interesting set. I think that there's going to be some new archetypes, but I think the thing that excites me most about this set is it sets the stage for a wave of a lot of crazy decks that are going to come out after it. I think
also just Terra type decks as
exactly.
well.
Right. I think I think this set is a really strong support set. I think Terapagos is a strong card in its own right, but I don't think that there's like, I don't know. What do you think? I don't think there's that much more outside of Terapagos EX that feels like its own deck in the set.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is there another? I don't know. That's just what I feel. I feel like Terapagos. Otherwise, I think it's a really good, strong support set.
I think, yeah. I think it's, man, this set, I think this is going to be one of the cooler sets.
Yeah.
Although I wish there were cooler supporters in the set so then I could have more full arts, but
yeah. I mean, look, Crispin, I don't know. I haven't looked at the full art, but the Crispin full art might be nice. I don't know.
I hope so.
Yeah. Which maybe we'll look at some point, but that's all from me, Jake.
That's all for me as well. Thank you so much for listening to the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta, the Metapod. I'm Jake. That's Sean. Again, you can discuss your hottest cards from Stellar Crown in the Discord. Post your polls from the pre-releases if you get to play in any of them. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.